Hello everybody and welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm Shellie Geigle with J&S Hobbies and Crafts, and today's tutorial is on how to make some handmade flowers, inking them and shaping them for my upcoming wedding album tutorial using the Stamperia You and Me paper collection. So what we do in the tutorial is we go over what I'm actually using and how I achieved these colors that match beautifully in the paper collection. So as you can see, all of these look really nice in there. So let's move on to the materials list. So we're going to go over the materials list of what I'm using to make my handmade flowers. For the Stamperia You and Me wedding album, large wedding album, I will be working on. So this tutorial is just on making some of the flowers and showing you how I'm coming up with the colors that I did. So first off, I'm using the Heartfelt Creations Small Wild Rose stamp set, and I use all of them. And also the Heartfelt Creations Small Wild Rose, the die, the one that fits over these to cut it out. I'm also going to be using the Heartfelt Creations Leafy Accents and the die. And all of this is in my store. Flower shaping tools, your mat and your stylus. You're going to need an old paintbrush. Stamping block is helpful. Now for the colors. For the leaves, what I'm using is the Tim Holtz Distress Ink, peeled paint, and crushed olive. And I show you how to ink them to get the different variations on there. For the flowers, what I'm using for the different ones here and the colors. First, for these little white ones, I'm using the small little dewdrop Brilliance, and it is the Platinum Planet, and it's like a metallic. Dried Marigold, Spun Sugar. To get the glossy effect and to stiffen up our leaves and our flowers, glossy accents, and I do show you how to use that and give you some tips on it. For inside the flowers, I am using Prills, and you can use any color you want for the inside. I use Lemon Chiffon. Stickles. Now stickles is optional. You don't have to have it. But stickles I did place on the outside rim of these to give it a little bit more of a sparkle. And of course, you're going to want your glue. And I'm using the Art Glitter Dries Clear Glue. So let's move on in to start working on these leaves. So I'm going to start off with the leafy accents, and the one that I'm going to be die cutting is this one, and only this one. And the only reason why is because I can use it all in one piece for a larger leaf, but I can also clip off to get this little part or this little part or this little part. So that's all I'm going to be doing here. So I am just going to be stamping with the Tim Holtz peeled paint. And because I am doing this tutorial, it's a large album and I don't know how much I'm going to be needing. I always make extra so that I have it ready for another project. So I think what I'm going to do is stamp on two different 65-pound 8.5 by 11 sheets to start, and then I'll have some extras. And I'm going to continue to fill up this sheet and the other sheet. So after stamping this 8.5 by 11 sheet, I'm able to get 4 and 4. So I'm going to move on to doing this one. So one thing I want to say, it's easier to color in your leaves first and then die cut them out. It saves time. So I'm just going in with the peeled paint and I'm going to lightly just kind of daub some colors, and I'm going to go right using the side of this dauber darker down the stems and on these curly cues. So I'm just going to lightly daub in some color here. You do not need to cover the whole thing. And then I'm going to take this and kind of go a little darker down near the stem on these. This is just what I like. Now you don't have to do yours. Some people like brighter greens and whatnot. So after I've done that, I'm going to come back in with the crushed olive and I'm going to daub some of that on there. And it'll give it some different coloring. This is just what I like. So that one's done. So I'm going to continue on and do all these before I die cut. Now after you die cut, you may have to come around the edges and touch up anything that's white edged after you're cutting out. Sometimes it's hard to get the blade right on exactly around the image, and also sometimes it just has that cut out around. So what I end up doing is once they're die cut out and I see any white along the edges, I like to go dark with the peeled paint around the edges of my leaves, and I'll show you that in a moment. I'm done with my inking for now. Some I did lighter, some are darker, and it really doesn't matter. It's whatever you like. And I know this doesn't look like much, but it will look really good, in my opinion, when I'm done die cutting. If any of you are not familiar with die cutting, I'll show you how it kind of works. Hang tight. Let me get my die cutting machine. I had to back the camera out to get this in frame. I'm using the Big Shot Plus, and they have a regular Big Shot that's less expensive. It only has a 6-inch wide platform. This one has about an 8.5. So since I do a lot of die cutting and stuff, for me, I like the bigger platform. I can just, instead of cutting my sheets, I can just go ahead and do that. And plus, if I have a larger die, a trim or something that I need to place this way, it fits in there. It's just my personal choice. I started with a regular Big Shot that only had 6-inch wide, and it worked for me for many years. It's just personal preference. So now I'm getting out the Leafy Accents die. So I'm going to be looking for this one. That's going to lay right on top of that. And I have it right here. So on these, there is a side with raised, it looks like little blades, and then it's flat. So I am going to take this side that has little blades and I'm just going to lay it right over my image. Now Heartfelt Creation makes it very easy because it will line up with their stamp. And then I'm just going to put my cover on there and I will sandwich it down. Now sometimes the die will slip. I'm not going to worry about this being a little off. I'm just not. So then all I have to do is roll it through. And depending on how intricate your die is, sometimes you might want to roll it back through. See that? You don't have to, on these particular die plates, to go back and forth like that. Usually it cuts it in one cut. I just kind of want to show you what you might have to do with some other ones. So then it just cuts out that image. And if you have those little scrolly things, those are kind of delicate. So you just got to be careful. And if it kind of cuts off there, there we go. It isn't going to matter much, but it came out in one piece. There is a tool that I like to use, and they come in different colors, they're different things, but I like this one. This one is Fun Stamper's Journey Bloom Tool. There's also several different ones. Okay, so on this one I don't really need it, but what this is a very sharp pick, and that is to help poke through. And if you notice, there's little holes in the die. In case the paper gets caught in there, you can just poke it through. But for this one, I just kind of use my fingers And then I'm real careful around those little scroll little things so that it doesn't tear off. And then it just comes right out. So here's this. Now I'm going to look at it. Notice that over here, this little piece in that little scrolly thing didn't come out. So that's where these little tools are. Whoops. And it just pops right out. So it's very easy. So I'll do that again. I'm just going to lay that on there. I'm going to line it up with my image. I think that's good. I'm going to grab my plate, lay it down. I'm going to hold it in place until I can get it in there. Now they do, for those of you that have issues with your wrist or shoulder for cranking, they do have electronic versions to where you push a button and it'll roll it right on through. I do have one of those when I am having really bad issues with my hands or wrists, but today I'm fine and this is what I prefer to use. So I went through once. That should cut it. Let's take a look. But like I said, sometimes you just have to roll it back through just to make sure you get a good clean cut through there. So I'm gonna, this is real staticky. Check it out. One way to check it out before you remove your die plate is look on the other side. That looks like a pretty clean cut, if you can see that. So one roll through. But if not, you just keep it in there and roll it back through. So I'm going to carefully get this out here. So, and I can see that little piece right back here did not come out, but it will. So I'm just going to poke my fingers through gently, and then I'm going to help that little curly cue. And it stuck, that little piece there that was part of the cut, not part of the actual die, is still there. And that's what I was talking about. You see there's a little hole right here, the paper stuck. On the other side there is a little hole. So you just poke it and there goes that little piece. So that's how easy it is to die cut. Now I'm going to set this off to the side for a second. Okay, so as you can see, you might get some white edges. So that's where I come back in with my peeled paint, and I take this and I just run it up. And it kind of gives a nice darker edge to that. So I'll go through and do that. And that's just what you got to do. And I do that on flowers as well too. I just kind of inspect to see what needs to be done. And I think that's pretty good for me. So there is my leaf. It has different colors. And to look side by side on something like that, it looks a little different, doesn't it? But not much. Once you get it cut out, your little crushed olive in there will give it some lighter colors to the dark. So this is ready for any glossy accents. It's ready for any Wink of Stella, anything that you would like to put on it. So I'm going to continue die cutting and then we will get to the flowers. We're moving on to stamping and inking our flowers, and I'm using Heartfelt Creations Small Wild Rose stamp and the die. So I'm not going to do a lot of the larger flower stamps because I'm just going to have on the cover pretty much the largest flower, and then in the inside I'll use a lot of the smaller or small medium sizes in there. So I'm going to show you what inks I'm going to use. Now don't freak out, but I do have dried marigold. Now I'm going to show you what this actually looks like when it's full power. We're not going to use full power. We're actually going to be blending it with our spun sugar, and it comes out beautiful. And I'm going to grab the paper pack I'll be using in the tutorial coming up, so you can kind of see what colors are in here and that we're going to kind of mimic with our inking. So as you can see on the cover, we have some pink and some peach. And in here, here's the back sheet. It has a lot of that in there. You can see that. We have grays and beige, but you can see here's a flower, pinks, There's pink. And we have some like peach color in there. And what I'm probably going to be using for the cover of the album is this print. And notice we have some pinks, some very light pale. We have some whites with some of the lighter colors in there. So we're going to try to mimic, but a little bit different so it doesn't just blend right in. So I'm going to start with the largest flower, and I'll see how that turns out. If it seems to be too big for what I want, then I can always use this size here. Now the first thing I'm going to want is to ink this with the spun sugar. So this is a lighter pink. And I'll just stamp that down. So as you can see, it's hard to see, it's a very light pink. Now what I'm going to show you is this. And I'm going to grab a dauber here. Now if I was just going to ink this and place it down, you can see it's just way too vibrant. So once I daub on there, then I'm going to start tapping it down until it is very light. And then I'm going to do light pressure and just kind of swirl it around. And I'm going to bring that up to you so you can see. So full power is this, and once we daub off we can get a very light color, but we're not done there. Let's grab our spun sugar and we're just going to swirl around that lightly. I'm going to get a little more on there. And now what starts happening is we start getting almost a very light or tropical color with pink and that other color. Now I'm going to bring this up and I'm going to grab the pad. And this is where we can see whether or not this is going to work in there. But here is a swatch on the cover. And as you can see, I think that's going to look beautiful in there. Now you can keep adding more pink if you want. But I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this again, the largest flower. And I'll just go right here. And I probably still have a little bit of ink left on that, so I'm not going to do it again. I do. And I'm just going to lightly, I'm not going to put a whole lot of pressure because I don't want that dark orange. All I'm looking for is that very light color. Very light. And if you get darker patches, that's okay. That's where we're going to bring back in our pink. And we'll swirl. And you can go darker or lighter, whatever it is you'd like to do. So there are two of the flower petals, because I'm going to be layering this. Now what I'm going to do is, on this is the second largest, and I'm going to be stamping that and doing the same thing. So, and while I'm at it, I'll get those down too. Now I still have ink on this, so I'm not going to stamp it into the ink pad when I do it. I'm going to get that down. And I'm going to take this and lightly swirl. Again, real light, because we don't want a real potent, we just want to be able to achieve a very light color. Now this is getting so light that I think it's going to be even better. The pink though, we're going to have to daub. We're going to go with that, I think. I think I might need a little more pink down in here. Let's try that. I'm going to set this off to the side. And just like doing the leaves and stuff, the Heartfelt Creations Small Wild Rose has a die plate that will fit right over the images. So that's another reason why I like the Big Shot Plus. I have a wider platform that will accommodate an 8.5 by 11 sheet. So I can actually die cut these at the same time. So I'm going to just kind of line that up where it should be. And now I'm going to run this through my die cutter. All right. So these two I'm just going to hold off to the side. So I'm looking for the two large and the one that's the next size down. Now another thing I am going to be using when I'm done shaping this and everything is the glossy accents. And I'll be doing that after I get my prills in there and get it all glued down. So I'm just going to do some real basic flower shaping. I'm not going to get too crazy. Here's a larger one. I'm just using one from the Essentials kit because that's the least expensive of the Heartfelt Creations flower shaping kits. But you come with this and it gives you two nibs here. And you also get a little pad like this. So I'm just going to use the smaller of the two that came with it, and I'm just going to kind of go around the edges to start. Kind of crinkle that up. One thing about when you're flower shaping is you don't want to hold your flower down when you're doing this. You want it to be able to move on its own. So as you can see, it's just kind of doing its own thing, kind of swirling around on me. And I'm just applying some pressure right around the edge. So what happens is it starts to do this. I'm going to bring this down closer. There we go. So that's what I got so far. Now all I'm going to do is just kind of swirl around. I'm going to swirl around until they start to kind of crinkle up a bit. I think, let me see if this will focus for us, but as you can kind of see, it just kind of crinkles up. I'm just going to do little swirls, and your flower is going to probably start rotating on you. So I'm just kind of going around in circles here until it kind of crinkles up. And I got one more over here. So I got that. And from a side view, this is what it looks like. Now I'm going to flip that over, and I'm going to take this, and you can see the inside, and I'm going to go around. And you will see that the flower petals will start coming up. And you can also press too, right at the base there of those leaves, and they'll just pop right on up for you. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other. And as you get more experienced with working with flowers, it will go a lot quicker. I'm going very slow so you can kind of see what I'm up to here. I'm going to press. It doesn't want to roll over there. But just kind of going around, and now I'm going to swirl until I start loosening up those fibers and it starts crinkling up a bit. Now, if you don't like the crinkled look of like that, then you don't have to keep swirling. What you could do is just kind of bring it from the tip, go down this way, and go down this way, and you won't have as much. But I'm going for this style, so I'm just going to keep swirling around there. And again, I am not going to hold my flower down. I'm going to let it do what it wants to do. Just keep swirling. So I got it there, and you will lift. Your sides will eventually lift. I'm going to place it on its other side. I'm going to go around the edges, and it will come up. So I'm going to grab my glue here, and I'm just going to plant some glue in the center. So these are my 2 largest flowers, and I'm going to offset them, meaning like this is going to be placed where it's in between there. The best I can anyway. They do tend to like to kind of shift around. Again, I'm going to use a smaller end, and I'm going to press in the center and go around. So what I've got here is this so far. Okay, now don't judge your flower until you are completely done, because it's going to take on a different look as you're doing this. So here is the next largest size, and I'm going to do the same thing. Just kind of go around the edges, and then I'll swirl around. Push this back in frame so you can see what I'm doing. And same thing. Kind of swirl it around, and you can press. So now I'm going to layer that right on in here. And again, I'm going to offset it. So just a little bit of glue. I'll place it where I think it needs to go, and then I'll use this to press down in the middle. So here's that flower. Very pretty. So next thing I'm going to do is, since it's all still drying, that glue, here's prills. And all prills are, I'm going to put a little bit in my hand, or just little teeny things. And that's going to be the inside of my flower. So what you're going to want to do with your glue is just kind of get it in the center there. And the more glue you put down in there, the bigger it's going to look, the innards. So I'm just going to put some right like that. Now the thing with this is I just pour it in there. I pour more than enough. Now don't stick your finger in there or anything in there while it's wet. Next thing is I usually get a little tray. If I'm doing a bunch of these, I'm going to use the cap really quick, and I'm going to pour off the excess so I'm not wasting. And I'll put it back in the jar. But using a tray will help you. So as you can see, and it's still wet. This has to dry before I can go to my next step. But here is our first flower. Let's compare. I'm going to hold this gently so it doesn't come out of shape while everything is doing. But now let's take a look at what we've done. Now how well does that flower match in to some of these colors? It looks wonderful. It's just like the perfect. So like I said, don't judge your flower when looking at it after inking it until you've assembled it, because it does take on a different look. So I'm just kind of throwing this flower around. I'm going to back up this a little bit so I can show you. Whoa, wrong way. Let's just go right about there, I think. Hopefully the camera will stop bouncing for me. Okay, so let's take a look. So we kind of looked at it while it was next to these colors, and it is perfect. Come down here, we have a little more pink, some more peach, and that's a perfect offset for a color. Let's go in here and see how well. That flower looks great with all of the different colors in here. It looks good on this page. Looks good there. And here's a flower. Let's compare it. It looks good. So I think the combination of what I showed you is going to look really nice. And here is just a nice beige. And I've got everything in front of me. So I'm just kind of showing you that on the different sheets in here, how well this color that we just created goes with everything. And we can darken it up, and we can kind of play with that color. Now, that looks really nice, don't it? And here we have a little more like a beigey peach, and that looks good next to it. So this flower we created is a great color for anything in here, and I think that that flower right there is going to look wonderful if I use this as my main cover for the outside of my album. All right, we'll take a look again, and we can also try to darken this up if we'd like. I think I'll play around with that. So now what I'm going to be doing is the second largest and these. Now I don't, like I said, I don't want to get too crazy with an overpowering orange, so I think I'm going to stamp it with the pink. Now after a while you may not be able to see it too well because of all the coloring, but you know, another thing we could try is doing the orange and then kind of blending. Let's try it. I was going to stay away from that, but we can try it and see what happens. So let's experiment. That's what I'm going to do. But I'm afraid this is going to be just way too dark, just going straight on. So when I dab this on, I'm not going to be pushing a lot of pressure. Real light. And let's see what happens. So this is kind of an experiment for me, but as you can see, let's try it. Well, I didn't quite get all my image. I didn't get it very good, but it's still a very usable die cut, and I'd say let's use it. So where is it? Right here. And I'm gonna make sure I get off a lot of that color. Let's go ahead and just swirl. Let's see what we get. This might be a darker color when we mix the pink because we're going darker with the orange. Just a little bit. I'm putting a little more pressure down, and I did stamp with that. I'm just kind of curious what that's going to look like, if that's something usable for us. And when you're doing your own flowers at home, keep in mind, if you have something that's a little too dark, you can always go with a different stamping color if you are going to be stamping. Or just not stamp at all and just die cut and go with a very light color or a light swipe. Alright, I got my pink out. And now I'm going to swirl. This is going to give me probably a darker color, but you're going to be able to see the stamp image a little bit more. And we'll see what it looks like once it's assembled. And that may look good next to our main flower by the time we're done. So I'm just going to keep giving it a little more pink. So as you can see, these are the other two I did. As you can see, it's a little bit darker. I say let's go for it and see what happens. So I'm going to die cut those really quick. And then we're going to play around with them, see how they come out. They may end up being great accent flowers for us. Okay, so quite a bit of difference in between our first one and our second. And then we'll get the paper pack out to see how it looks together. So let's go ahead and shape these. We're going to use 2 of these and 1 of these. And we'll just do the same way we did before, or you can just kind of do something different. And I'm just going to work on each petal, going around and then swirling. And here's another thing, to get your flowers a little more tighter, what you can do is after you're done swirling, drag it in. Don't hold it, but just drag it in, and you will see it will stand up. Get some glue down in there. Offset these just a little bit. And press. So that's a 2-1 with 2 layers, and I'm going to get another one in there. Now one thing you can do is not go so tight with it and make it a little bit looser of a flower petal, but I'm going for this one because I'm going to be making several. So the next one I do, I don't have to pull in as much, or I can kind of flatten them back out to be a little bit of a looser flower. But we're just going to go with this. Put some glue in the center of that one. And you can always spread it back out a little if you need to. Set it in there and press. Okay, so this is what I have. And I'm going to get my prills in there. I really need a tray. I do get messy with these. And then there's this one. So this one is darker, and it looked quite a bit darker when we were inking it, but now look, it's just a shade more. And I think it looks pretty good. So let's grab it. We'll just use the cover to take a peek. And that one gives a little more color. And then this one's just, I don't know if you can tell the difference, is just slightly more. So we can get away with going a little bit darker with the orange. Matter of fact, I have these two right here. Let's experiment. Let's see what would happen if we added just a little more ink. So I'm going to dab a little here. Let's do it. Let's see what happens. It's already die cut out, but let's just go darker. So this looks real orange. So by blending the pinks on over it, it really does control a lot of that orange. But I was afraid doing it this dark, that it would just be too dark and throw off the colors. But now I'm looking to see. So we have some orange going on there. Let's give it a try. So we've got our biggest flower being very light. Our next flower that we did just a little bit more, we stamped with the orange. And we put a little more orange. Now this one's pretty orangey, and we're just going to swirl in pink over it to change it into more of a kind of a tropical color. But let's see if this ends up being too dark, just in case some of you go a little bit too dark with your ink. So you can see that those are pretty dark. Let's do it. And this is a good way to teach you not to be afraid to try something. I mean, my goodness, if this is just too dark, or it just doesn't match in, I'll save these. And just like when I did this big pile of leaves, as you can see, I got a huge pile going on here. I'm going to be using that, and if I'm die cutting now, I might as well get everything ready for another tutorial. Save me time doing it all at once. Best I can. So there's that. Oop. You get in there. Get some glue. And of course I got to be real careful because it's all still wet. So here's our colors. Lightest, a little bit more in color, and then this one. Let's see how they look. Because if this looks good, then that means we're working with colors that are kind of like a no-fail. So there's that. Let's bring in, let's go to that first page, because I think this is going to work with a lot of different things to offset. But let's go to that one page to see if it's something. If not, I'll save it. Okay, so that looks pretty orange. I might add a little more pink, but I think there's some color. So let's see how something like this would look. Our main large flower. Let's get some more greenery without covering up too much. Let's get a little, see the color kind of changes on, unless it's just me. I don't know, I think that looks pretty good there. So in case you do some that is a little more orangey and it looks a little more, you can always add more pink to it. But we're still not done with these flowers, so they probably will look a little bit different because we have yet to add our glossy accents. So I'm going to give these prills, because you definitely don't want to apply your glossy accents while your prills are still trying to dry, because what happens is, see, I was handling this so much, is You see there, you can start seeing some of the glue because I did not leave it alone. So I was trying to show you. So I'm just going to add in a little bit more there. And you have to be very careful. Hopefully that'll work. So I'm going to leave these alone, and then I'll be back in about 5-10 minutes when I know for sure that they are dry. And this is where we're going to work with glossy accents. And then, oh, as far as this goes, this silver, let's see. Okay, the smallest of the flowers in this stamp set, you'll want to daub on your silver, and then you will just stamp and you will die cut it. So what you're going to get is just some with a sparkly kind of a metallic silver color on it. And what you can do is once you've shaped these, like, and I'm just going to do single layer with these. They're not going to go on top of each other. You can though, because I'll probably have some double layer, but just to show you what you can do. So on 2 of these, I'm just going to do a regular little shaping, and I'm not going to do anything crazy. I'm just going to kind of swirl around, and you can drag it in a little, flip it over, swirl in the middle. We will drop some glue in there. So these are totally simple. Get that. Okay. We'll do the same with this one. Now, if this comes out being just a little bit too stark white, what we can do to give it a little more color is just kind of, I'm just going to use this, is just kind of get the tips a little more. And if you want to swirl around the middle, you can. It just changes the color a little bit. You might want to wait for the ink to dry before you put it on your pad. And then with the last one, here is an idea that you can do. Is on this last one, before you do anything with the shaping, is you can take your dauber, and this is orange, and you can lightly, remember we're not using a whole bunch of ink, we're just going to lightly get those edges, just a little bit, and then we'll go over it with pink, but we're not going to get the inside with it, and it will blend in nicely with the other. Now we can also get maybe some pink, just regular pink flowers going with our ink pad. There's this, and I'll show you what this looks like. I think this always comes out pretty when you just get the edges and stuff when you're doing any type of flower. It looks kind of nice. So now you can see, I hope, you just have a little on the edges. So I'll be back, and here's the difference. This one is just with the stamp, and I'm not sure if you can see this against my background. This one is giving a little more silver to it, and then this one's there. And I think once I get in a little closer, you'll be able to see the differences. So these are dry, but I do want to do one more because I want to give you some ideas. Now, I use this stamp. It's the double one in the pack. I stamped it with the pink. And on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to swirl just in the middle, and I'm not going to go all the way out. I'm just going to go a little bit past the inside with this. And so you just kind of swirl around the middle, coming up just a little bit on those petals. And this is just to get variety. Now I'm going to take the pink and I'm going to swirl around that. Alright, so that's what I have. Now I'm going to grab the pink, and all I'm going to do is lightly go along the outside little edges there. Okay, I'm going to shape it the way I was before, and we'll see how this color looks with our paper pack. I'm going to set that off to the side. So I'm not sure how this will look, but I'm hoping it will add a nice accent flower to the paper pack. And we'll check them all out when we're done to find out what we like and what we don't. Alright, glossy accents. So the purpose of this is not only to add a glossy sheen to this, but I use it because it will stiffen up my flowers. Now when you apply this, you'll want to use an old brush, because if the glossy accents gets too dry on this, it will destroy it. So what I usually do is I keep it moist, I do everything at once, and then I go use water and some like Dawn dish soap, something like that, and I clean it, and then I can use it again. So glossy accents, and looks like I'm going to need to snip the edge here just a little bit. So I'm going to snip that a little so I can get a better flow out. And what I like to do is I just put a glob on my paper. Oh, and another thing is on your leaves, you can shape these. I didn't go over that, but if you want to, I use the larger end. You can kind of just press a little bit here and there to kind of give it a little curve if you want. If you want. A lot of times I don't. I just leave it alone, but as you can see, it's kind of made a shape there. You can kind of push out ends or do whatever it is that you want on these. Okay, here's our stuff. Let's start with this large one. So one thing about glossy accents, it is extremely sticky. It's like a glue. It's a medium. And it does not dry that way though. So I'm going to go with the bottom first, and I'm just going to kind of go around and quickly get the bottom row. Kind of move myself around, I'll hold it here and apply it. And you don't have to go real thick with it, just enough. It'll stiffen them up. And just lightly stroke on the gloss. And you will see that this flower will look different when I'm done. And you don't have to be precise, that's for sure. If you need to add a little more, then do so. So as you can see, it looks wet. It is wet with it, but it's going to dry like that. And it's going to stiffen. So it's really sticky right now. And I'm going to move on. And okay, so I have all that over here where I had my finger. I'm just going to kind of, and then I'm going to put them, and you don't want to let them touch because they will stick and then it will tear. And they'll probably flatten out a little bit. So I'm just going to kind of push it up, kind of cradle it up like that, and I'll set it off to the side. This one I think is going to look really nice, and I think so. If it's easier just to flatten it out a little bit, it will resume its shape. Whoops, I don't want that on my clothes. And for the leaves. So the leaves, what's going to happen is I just kind of press them down and quickly. Now what's going to happen is you're going to want to keep moving this around a little bit because this stuff will start sticking probably before you are done with your leaves. So I'm going to leave it in this little general area because then I'm going to lift it from this spot and put it somewhere else on this paper. When I'm doing large quantities, I usually have several pieces of white or whatever scratch I have paper available, and I'm going to just kind of lift it and put it over here. Now in a moment or two, what I'm going to do is kind of tap this to make sure it isn't stuck to the paper. So I'm going to give this probably about 5, 6, maybe 10 minutes, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you it's still going to look wet, but it's no longer going to be sticky. So here we are, they are dry, and I did apply some stickles to the edges. And Stardust is a good one to use, or Diamond. But I'm going to bring these up and you can see. Kind of sparkles them, and it's just along the edges there of all these flowers. Now let's see how they kind of look on that paper. Again, I'm thinking I'm going to be using for the cover this one. So let's just throw these down and see how the colors work. I think in the future, though, I might go just a little shade less on that one, but it is looking pretty good. So one thing before you go out and buy any materials, I do want to say, this wedding album, I will be using 3 of these 12 by 12 paper packs of the Stamperia You and Me. If you are on a budget and you cannot afford the 3 paper packs, it doesn't make sense, then it might be a tutorial you want to bypass and maybe take bits and pieces of the creativity of how I design the pages and create something different with that. But I did get a lot of requests when I did do that larger album for my son, and I used different paper, of course, that people still wanted me to create something like that. And it's been a long time since I've done something of this magnitude. So please keep that in mind when this tutorial comes out. And I will see you real soon when it does. Happy crafting!